What do you see here? Probably nothing is what you'd say, and that would be a good answer. But this video isn't actually just a black screen. It's a shape on a background, as you can see here in editing. However, you can't tell me what the shape is, because there are no other shapes by which to know it. It simply fades into the background. But if I add another one behind it, well, without me telling you what either one is, you can suddenly know what both of them are. No shape has become two shapes. 0 plus 1 is 2. Of course, that's not really the case. It's just an exaggerated way of showing the concept. That depending on the surroundings, the same exact thing can be perceived so differently that it seems almost as if an act of magic has occurred. Here's a more relevant question. How do you tackle a large problem? Something on the order of 1 or 2 days of work. And here's a less relevant example. The problem is having to save the president from a band of superhuman terrorists who've hidden him in an offshore cleanup facility so they can launch a nuke above Manhattan. Yes, it's Metal Gear Solid 2 again. I couldn't not make this video after referencing it in the Son of Boy one, so strap in for a wild ride. Despite this silly example, we can begin to examine the less silly concept of what makes an action. Knowledge, experience, and will. How much do you know to limit potential options? How many times have you performed similar actions to determine their success? And what is your desire to see one of those options through? Put these three components together and you get a definitive action. Now, since this is Raiden's situation, a solo foxhound commander with radio support sent into the big shell to defuse the situation, let's say how he could handle this task. When asked about his field experience, he points to specific VR missions, actions with numbers like sneaking 60, weapons 40, sheepishly admitting that he doesn't have any actual experience, the kind outside of simulations. That's strike one. Kept in the dark about the conspiracy which is slowly unfolding here, such as being told that terrorists have a ransom demand only for them to deny it, or learning that the president was working with them for a time, he has little information to go on. Strike two. And as he himself says,
I'm here because I was assigned to this mission, not because I want to. If I could, I'd be out of here in a second.
Strike three. Raiden has none of the components necessary to create action here. In short, he's a far cry from Solid Snake, the hero of the previous entries in the series. A man who's infiltrated outer heaven to destroy Metal Gear, a bipedal nuclear-capable tank, did the same in Zanzibar Land with an even more upgraded one, and then again in Shadow Moses with Metal Gear Rex, an even more upgraded one. Snake was often facing terrible odds, superhuman foes, and being kept in the dark just like Raiden, but when the latter is scolded like a child, the former is the one doing the scolding between his flirts and quips. Confident and commanding, Snake demands answers from Colonel Campbell, the commander each of our heroes follow, who is clearly defeated by Snake's will. Fighting back against that ignorance and controlling the situation, Snake is a copy of 80s action movie heroes, being an archetype that just makes you as confident. I mean, you've seen a guy who looks like this save the day 100 times, why would he be any different? But Raiden, copying these missions through a VR headset, his jokes fall flat between whimpering complaints. He's in the entirely opposite design to that subconscious archetype that Snake is. I mean, he says what we're all thinking right away when his girlfriend Rose, pairing with no chemistry, is assigned to handle the mission data. He remarks,
"She's never been a part of a field mission. This is insane."
Even he thinks someone with no experience will fail. Where Snake demanded answers and power, Raiden lobs complaints beneath power, constantly told to get a hold of himself and calm down just like this.
Looks like your new hosts have a Harrier too.
A Harrier? What is this?
Calm down. It just means they anticipated the attack.
It makes sense because this is how he responds to two of his orders, to save the big shell from being blown up and rescuing the president respectively.
The priority is now on removing those C4s that the terrorists wired over the big shell.
Colonel, you know I'm no bomb disposal expert.
Rescue the president.
We have no idea where he is.
It seems simple, but really think about what these interactions mean. before Raiden are massive problems. Yes, these are valid complaints. He isn't an expert in disposing bombs or search and rescue. There are hundreds of people better suited to these actions than he is, and I don't hate anyone for recognizing that. If he could step aside and let someone else do it instead, that would be for the best. But he can't. He is here, no one else, and whether he's best for it or not in the whole world, he's the closest option in this one, and that makes him the best within context. Think of how frustrating it is to explain a problem to someone, and before you can give more detail which might make it easier, the first response is just, "Oh, there's no way I could do that." When he says they don't even know where the president is, this is a barrier to saving him, but that's also just one of the steps. Yeah, you can't save someone without knowing where they are, so get to knowing where he is to save him. Each time he complains, he's almost immediately handed a solution, with the colonel informing him of Stillman, a bomb disposal expert on site to coach him through the process, or Mr. X, a cyborg ninja that might be helping him, informing him of Ames, the president's detail who can provide his location and who can be found himself because of a pacemaker. Where Snake asks where he can find a sniper rifle, Raiden simply says he doesn't have one. One looks for answers and one restates the problem. These interactions and solutions reveal the premise of what to do about creating an action from minimal experience and minimal knowledge. Limit things down. Stop looking at the big picture, the concept of the action, and start looking at its incarnation right here, right now. Does he need to know how to defuse a vague bomb? No, he needs to know how to stop the bombs planted on the big shell by Fat Man, one of the terrorists. That's more specific, which might seem harder, but it's the opposite because it gives you less options to explore. He can radio in and say he needs to speak to someone who's disabled a bomb from Fat Man before, not that he needs 17 experts on hand all ready for it to possibly be one of their specialties. And this is exactly what Stillman, Fat Man's former mentor, provides by giving him a way to detect the cologne the Mad Bomber uses as a signature. It's that specific level of detail which makes it possible. Raiden doesn't need to handle the concept of bomb disposal, he just needs to dispose of these specific bombs. Limitation is the answer. Reduce the situation down so that knowledge and experience lose their ability to limit, and all that matters is will. In fact, this is the Kojima meta-narrative, that we as the players of the game are undergoing the same concept. We are not legendary soldiers fit to save the world from a new Metal Gear. We are office workers and laborers and students, full of knowledge and experience, but the wrong kind for this situation. We want to. We boot up the game to get the satisfaction of doing so because we have the will, but no other components of the action. We're like Raiden, facing down 1,000 options with only an hour to choose. And so the game does the rest for us. It limits away the need for experience and knowledge. We don't have to come up with the idea of freezing the bombs or listening for a pacemaker. They're done for us. We don't have to worry about interacting with every object to look for something because they're in obviously different interactable containers. You don't even have to be very creative to hide. The maps are designed to give obvious places for it, weirdly stacked pallets or random lockers. The game simulates knowledge and experience through limitation because that's what they do. They take the nonsensical ideas of a novice and narrow them down to the slim, tested and true ones of an expert. They dedicate time and energy to removing possibilities, just as that expertise itself was formed in giving up every other possible expertise. For a game, all you need is the intent because all you have to do is defuse a bomb made by Fat Man, the character from Metal Gear Solid 2, using a specific item and specific controls which can only elicit specific actions. You defuse a bomb, but you are not a bomb defusal expert. This is how Raiden, how we, with no experience, managed to become heroes against the most stacked odds ever seen. I mean, consider that this is the whole mission. You have to save the president, and also there's a nuke involved, and also the terrorist consists of a vampire who can fly a Harrier and dies twice but actually doesn't die, a woman who can't be hit by bullets wielding a railgun, the world's greatest explosive expert, and a Russian cowboy who owns a bipedal death machine and has a different consciousness in his right arm that's the main villain from the last game, and all of this is part of a grand conspiracy by the shadow organization, the Patriots, who seek to control the flow of information in the digital age to rewrite history and culture as they see fit, and the means to do so is an AI here on this very big shell, which is all a cover-up for the whole thing, and you should have no way to tackle all of that. But you do, because one at a time, boss by boss, search by search, you're given only one real option. Yeah, you choose how you get there, which path around the big shell, and how you deal with the guards, which pre-built corner you hide in, but the overall narrative will always be the same. The options will never change. I mean, even the ways you fail in a game are predetermined. You can't do so in a way that wasn't coded for. This is where things start to sound dark, though, don't they? I mean, it's hopeful that limitation can help you tackle big issues, but, well, when you take it further, that seems to be more like control. That you have a feeling of doing something, but in reality, you change nothing, just your perception of what's being done. You're just moving forward between points already laid out, a situation so narrow that the only way out being forward is an entirely literal statement. Rig the situation so there's only one option, and suddenly you control all of someone's actions. And who are we but the sum of our actions? Control all of those and you control the entire person, who they'll believe themselves to be and the justifications for it, their memories, what they desire and why. After all, Raiden had no way to succeed at this task, right? And yet he does. So it didn't need to be him, it could have been anyone. We are nothing more than our situations. This is expressly the point revealed by the Patriots, who decide almost every occurrence in the US and seek to expand that to the world, controlling people by controlling the information which shapes them and their situations. They don't care about winning wars or stockpiling wealth, but rather the most valuable resource of all, will. After all, if you control desires, then that means you control the world without such messy conflict like war. So, the big shell incident that Raiden is going through is actually a mimic of Shadow Moses that Snake did. Each has a mystical gang of enemies, led by an antagonistic family member of the main character, who carries a virus to the end to destroy them and even more. It's orchestrated this way to test if the simulation makes the man, if anyone could be Solid Snake, even the exact opposite of him like Raiden is. And the answer is yes. Two men who couldn't be more distinct levels of right for the job come to the same result and save the day, destroying Metal Gears left and right whether they have before or not. It never mattered who it is, because forced down a narrow path, there was only one person they can become to move forward and survive. And that's where it gets even worse. We all want to survive. We all keep moving forward because we must be anyone at all, and that's what makes us whatever our situations wish through their limitations. If we didn't move forward, rejected our conditions, we would be safe from this manipulation, but as a forever solidified self. Dead. So we don't. We accept them and act within bounds whether we like it or not, like Raiden does the whole time. This means that every aspect of action, not just knowledge and experience, but also will, are able to be revoked. We don't even have to desire the one path laid out before us. Take Solidus' rebellion against the Patriots here, hoping to hijack their AI and take New York off-grid with an atmospheric nuclear blast. He does a lot to this end, assembling Dead Cell and the former Russian soldiers under Olga, Ocelot, and gaining all the information about Arsenal gear, waiting for the right day and launching his attack. It's not like he just stumbles onto this, the culmination of many actions, and his status as the former president who was cast out by the Patriots. And in the end, it's just what they wanted, because they were the ones who created his situation to control his desires. He didn't find all this information, assemble these players. He was made to desire it and then allowed to do so. He, believing it was entirely his will, does all the actual work of their plan, which then in turn controls Raiden exactly as well. Control the situation and you control the choices. Free will becomes an illusion. Or at least it can be. We have to understand how Snake shows otherwise to understand the importance of how Raiden failed to ever do so. So to Shadow Moses we go. What Snake experienced here was, well, an actual full experience. He had to be taken from his home and brought to a facility to be injected with nanomachines and fox dye before then working his way into the Alaskan facility, and only then did the mission begin, but you can't say that stuff wasn't part of it. He had to be a man with the right training to be selected, putting all of that effort behind each action he takes. And during it, he wasn't just performing the actions of the mission. Yes, that was the task to be cleared for his survival, but throughout were moments of introspection as he's captured, moments of friendship as he and Otacon trauma bond, moments of love as he and Meryl uncover each other in true instead of the ideas of each other. The facts of the mission, the things we can observe from the outside, are nowhere near the whole experience. Fighting a sniper battle against Wolf isn't the same as fighting a sniper battle against Wolf as Meryl lies in the middle, bleeding out and needing to be saved after you and her have spilled your hearts to each other. You can't just set up a physical recreation of that moment and call it the same because it doesn't have his emotions, his thoughts during each action. You would need to have a whole romance aspect of the simulation to truly recreate it, and then that in turn would be influenced by the person's whole life, meaning the simulation required would become an entire life in turn. This love, it hardens the consequences too, and not just life and death, but life and love and death. He may be following the only path he can, but he's doing it because he wants something out of it, because he wants to save Meryl and be with her after it's done. And when he does, that's when the path widens and choice becomes real again, as they literally go off into this flat space with no obstacles. He comes out of it having done what he was ordered to, but with Meryl, with emotions he could never be commanded to feel, with the words of an now-dead friend he could never have been commanded to hear. All of those things that don't change the result still change him. There's still bits and pieces of Shadow Moses that he couldn't help, but that he does get to help which ones he carries forward and how he uses them. In this case, as motivation to spend his life destroying Metal Gears around the world, as he and Otacon have done since. The content of a recreation of Shadow Moses is the same, but the context is wildly different. Raiden is different because VR lacks that context, that specificity. Snake is formed across 3 missions: Outer Heaven, Zanzibar Land, and Shadow Moses. Whether he likes it or not, each one is a huge part of who he is because they consumed a large portion of all he'd experienced as a soldier. But Raiden, he says,
I've completed 300 missions in VR.
So none of them have to be important to him, forming into a blur. Some of those could easily be forgotten and he wouldn't even know. They also don't have a story to them. As physical recreations, they lack the thoughts and emotions, meaning there's no love or friendship, just cold, hard motion. He's not performing these tasks for any reason more than because they are the task. But even if there was more to them, why would it matter? Love, friendship, those are important because they outlast the mission, exist independent of it. But his mission ends with that reality being destroyed, the headset taken off. They can't be continuous outside of the action, so they lose their impact, their point. That means that there are no consequences either. If he fails, all he need do is take off the helmet and none of it matters anymore. Sure, he might get yelled at for failing, but he doesn't have to live with the failure in that mission. With something like Meryl dying, he just has to live with a detached scolding. And yet even more, the actions themselves, the one real thing here, aren't valuable to him because they're too specific. Snake had to train generally to understand the concepts, but Raiden, all he has to do is understand the situation. Like we said earlier, the game took care of it for him. The simulation could only have so many options. Sneaking 60 isn't sneaking, it's one specific situation of sneaking, a puzzle that can be solved independent of the skill and intended to teach, like knowing the pattern of a math problem but not the steps. Essentially, he's left with what, but never why, unable to apply the experience to any other situation. The consequence of that earlier discussion. If you only ever address hyper-specific scenarios, then you never have brought enough knowledge or experience to make the limitation yourself. Each mission remains sequestered, nothing carried forward from one to the next, but each one forming its own new reality, its own space, away from all else that you slip into for moments at a time. Raiden's life has no consequence, no continuity, and as such, no real friendship, no real love. Rose is just a spy of the Patriots in the end, forced to be with him. The point is that it's also unlimited, that it's too limited. From being a soldier who can be trained anywhere at any time, he never learns how to get anywhere at any time. Everything remains a disparate series of games, and he fails to ever exercise free will, to develop a self to do it with. He has an empty room, just a desk and a bed, because there's no man to choose more furniture. His relationship with Rose is vapid, where they know nothing about each other because there's nothing to know. He's constantly whining, scolded by the colonel like a child, because he is a child, old in body but with a mind never developed, never challenged. From having every option, he loses the ability to truly choose any of them. This virtual nature is meant to mimic the internet. It is, in short terms, a land without context, just like Raiden in VR. As the Patriots exposit, revealed to not just hold, but to actually be the AI hidden within the new Metal Gear the Big Shell was constructed to cover up, information used to be shared peer-to-peer, that is, between a speaker and a listener with a context of each other. The information would be molded by each person in turn, a speaker adapting to their audience and a listener who understood the speaker first to understand the words second. From seeing each other outside of just the sharing of information, the information itself gained more consequence, more depth. And it took effort to speak and remember, needing to be said in full over and over instead of just being recorded. That also means it died with those individuals. It had to be correct for them to pass it on. It had to benefit them somehow to be worth the energy of preserving it. But this was easier because it could only come from this time and place which they shared, meaning it always was born from and impacted their surroundings just the same. It was tested, it was inherently connected to their identities. It was so properly molded to be what it needed to be. But the more and more it could be recorded and passed on outside of the individuals, the more and more it lost context. Books, for example, well, they still need to be considered important to be literally carried and shared, and there can only be so many of them printed, essentially vetting the information as it takes resources to print them. It had to be efficient and to serve a purpose, and you can see how easily they do still break down. They're not forever. But you don't personally know the writer of the book. You don't have the context of the speaker to get the full depth, and they aren't writing it specifically for you either. Interpretation becomes more important, and what they wrote doesn't adapt as it survives, locked into its original text and time. The context is weakened from the start and only continues to get weaker the older it is. And when you remove the physical interface, well, suddenly information is entirely detached from context. Anything from the news to fanfiction can be found alongside any other, on any domain, at any time, from any place, from any speaker, all of which you know nothing about because it doesn't exist around you, and because it can entirely change its name, shape, and purpose overnight if the author wishes. Nothing takes effort to put into the collection of information. Random thoughts in the shower mixing with death tolls from the war, vacation pictures next to presidential polls. Without limitation, jumped between rapidly and wildly, even on the same platform at that, everything becomes like Raiden in VR, so specific that it's effectively useless except in regards to itself, yet also without any barrier to entry or separation between. Unlimited limitation. This is why things start to feel so unreal in the mission, for us and Raiden. The Big Shell incident is a reflection of this all, a collection of disparate information like the internet, tying our and Raiden's experience together. The presence of a vampire and an incarnation of Lady Luck, of an arm taking over a man's mind and a secret third clone, it's like a bunch of bad fiction all stitched together. The interest of 100 people infecting one man's experience, but all in the same place. In the structure itself, yes, it's mapped out specifically for you. You have a guide through it, but it's also so liminal, I mean, does the big shell really make any sense in the middle of the water, so far above like this? It's such a dangerous structure. Is that to produce doubt in a meta-narrative? Because it looked cool and added to the gameplay? Because hexagons are kind of digital? How much suspension of disbelief is right for us to accept here? Then it's made worse, revealing that Arsenal gear is actually underneath this structure as it's all sunk to board that instead, leading to a space with no map, with no horizon, just detached sections between loading zones. It even has an endless space of darkness from which emerge endless Metal Gear rays, despite supposedly being a confined structure. The once Russian soldiers are now ninjas. The Colonel is actually a part of the Patriots AI who is corrupted by the virus you uploaded to Arsenal Gear to try and stop them, beginning to spout nonsense statements left and right at random moments like these ones.
Raiden, turn the game console off right now.
What did you say?
The mission is a failure. Cut the power right now.
What's wrong with you?
Don't worry, it's a game. It's a game just like usual.
You'll ruin your eyes playing so close to the TV.
Snake appears and references infinite ammo, and the game itself starts to play against you with fake game over screens. Is this meant to actually be occurring, or is it all an illusion? Like, does Raiden see this, or is it just a part of the game we see? This doubt is strong enough that some people believe the entire game, the story, is not an actual mission, but a simulation. And with that, we as the fans have proved the point for Kojima. Give people a series of disparate information without context, give them Arsenal gear, and they will have to argue that it's not real to make sense of it. It simply can't feel like reality without context, because as we said with Snake, context is the meat of reality, the stuff in between giving us our chance to form. So as we exist more and more on the internet, a place where you can find vampires and Lady Luck as neighbors, references to old games with no lead-in, statements emerging like rays from a scrolling void, all lacking any definitive link, we begin to feel disconnected from life just like Raiden. How do we know what's real and what isn't when there's no context? The internet is our big shell incident. I normally quote the anything and everything all the time bit from Welcome to the Internet, and while that's relevant too, I think more appropriate this time is, and it did all the things we designed it to do. Destroy reality, and you can convince people of anything. From endless information, the path has been limited down to one. This is why the Patriots say,
What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
And how they truly believe it's for the sake of humanity. Why is the shadow government, which already rigs all these occurrences, now an AI inside of a super fortress? Because that AI is meant to control information, to reintroduce the limitation which has been lost, so that there can be one set reality instead of 8 billion individual ones. Raiden was their test subject, the proof of concept that under such conditions people would lose sight of themselves and reality, which then justifies how the Patriots molded him through his situation. If the people can't choose to do the hard work in this new framework, then you limit them into having to do it so they don't recoil into their comfortable little cocoons, finding only what justifies their selfish feelings at this exact moment, just like Raiden, a man who says Snake is a hero who could never be a terrorist, that ideals get one through a mission, and then rejecting that man to his face minutes later as a terrorist. A man who questions his orders, but accepts them just the same, who doesn't think of anything for himself but regurgitates Snake's lessons. There's no consistency, no originality to Raiden, the example of the masses. How could a species trending towards him save itself? We created the framework to rob ourselves of the effort and limitation which makes reality. Everything we built as a species, all of that information we worked so hard to create, if it dies if we lose the will to preserve it, as if we never existed at all. And so the culmination of that all, of human advancement, the Patriots, overtake us to save the result of all of our efforts from ourselves. The effect becomes the cause. Maybe we gave up the will to create reality exactly because we could make code which did it for us. Instead of each peer-to-peer interaction doing it, a messy system, now the result of human innovation itself does it. The Patriots can justify controlling reality for all of us because they are the result of all of us.
We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we.
Except, I think what the Patriots reason here is the real contradiction. Convenient truths, momentary pocket realities found with a click, are not the proof of humanity's weakness, but can be the very context they claim is needed. Raiden is a child. He is inconsistent and flimsy, and each day he exists like that, it gets harder and harder to fix the issue, with each year adding more resistance. I think most complaints about him hold true, and so much about his character is frustrating. But I think he's frustrating because he's everything we hate to recognize about ourselves, openly showing very human faults. He is the behavior we seek to escape in shame, the motivations which would lead to creating the Patriots in the first place, away from inconsistent flesh into cold code. What they believe is simply the culmination of how we fear ourselves. Take what Raiden says about Snake. Within just a few minutes of gameplay, he does take these two distinct stances that we referenced.
The solid snake that saved Shadow Moses couldn't turn into a terrorist. What you do isn't grassroots activism. It's more like terrorism.
Changing your opinion in a span of minutes is pretty bad behavior. But could there be an event in those few minutes that justifies it? Say, for example, being attacked by a Harrier and witnessing a new form of a superweapon leaping out of the water to save it once you almost died fighting it all off. That should probably change a man. Maybe ideals were enough when it was just people to fight. But once you're staring down a death machine, do you think ideals will still get you through it? I do believe there's nuance here. Raiden is being selfish, changing his mind to justify his hatred for this mission the more it intensifies. But that's just a reflection of how much he, as a specific person, can handle. And it also makes sense to change his mind because the situation has changed too. These words, they exist only to improve the moment in which he says them, abandoned the second they no longer serve that purpose. And just because this is something that can be selfish, doesn't mean it's not good. It is also limitation. Tailoring information to here and now rather than anywhere and everywhere all of the time. Even if a few minutes may be too small a time frame to justify doing this, it's still there. It can still be a good thing. He's just doing it in the wrong way. The issue the Patriots claim only arises when we take these two quotes and play them side by side without mentioning the middle, taking them out of context. It's not that we say things in the moment which makes us awful, it's that we're beholden to every single thing we say in an era of constant collection, that we no longer feel comfortable fitting the moment because doing so is now seen for its synonym, inconsistency. Just like sharing information peer-to-peer, we are contextual creatures, meant not to be these long-spanning, expansive selves where the same qualities are always maintained, but rather many small ones, adapting to the conditions around us, then again with the next ones, maintaining only that which provides an advantage, the natural selection of the self. Why would we hold on to things that don't actually benefit us? How would that create a creature to survive better? Hell, even stress is a beneficial thing, so this isn't even saying that life needs to be totally comfortable, it's just saying that we're meant to adapt and change. It just so happens that in the modern day, situations change faster than ever, meaning we must as well to keep up. If information can change in a matter of seconds, then so will opinion. The boys from Kingston said it best. Maybe there's nothing, only this moment. So, yes, there is an issue with the unfiltered flow of information. It exaggerates all qualities to nonsensical lengths. But the Patriots are creating part of that problem when they hold this all against him, when they break his sense of self by recording past ones which no longer exist and confusing him with them. He wasn't a good person before all of this, and not even a full one. But that was the result of his conditions, and he did at least have a grip on reality. He thought he was moving forward. The breakdown is only once the Patriots collect all of that and use it for their purpose out of context. One interaction shows this best. On Arsenal Gear, a broken reality shoved in Raiden's face, he takes an important step. He recognizes that his sense for what is real is broken, that he feels empty, and asks Snake how he doesn't feel the same, what he fights for.
Find something to believe in, and find it for yourself. And when you do, pass it on to the future.
Raiden takes this to heart, rejecting the Patriots later with a definitive statement.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
This is his Shadow Moses moment. He didn't choose to face this down with Snake, but it did happen, and he chose to ask for a why, to find something emotional, abstract to use to get through it and carry forward out of it. Snake was an anomaly in the mission, never meant to show up, which means that the second something uncontrolled by the Patriots entered Raiden's life, he saw his flaws and wanted to change. The spell was broken and he started to seek out his own context, create his own reality, exercise his will. All it took was a situation with more than one option. And this thing shared between them, sure it's just some words, but it lives and dies with them. If they fail, so does this idea. So it's something to better humanity, an idea to maybe allow us greater strength. It is tested by their literal survival, meaning it is subject to important limitation, to consequence, and since it is between two people, to adaptation, each one free to hold a different meaning of it in their own minds to meet the moment. It is everything about information in the old days that the Patriots claim we cast off, found so easily the second it was allowed out of their control. And why is that? Because they don't actually desire that. They robbed people of their ability to do this, and then they used the lack to claim that they must provide it for us. Look at how they respond to Raiden when he tells them all we just covered.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you.
That's the proof of your incompetence right there.
They hate him for it. They hate him for trying to do what they claim he can't, for proving them wrong. They squash his confidence because his confidence threatens them. Once again, there's nuance. Is he right now just stealing Snake's words? Yes. But in a life or death situation, and for someone who's just now learned to do it at all, is that really an issue? He doesn't need to sit down and write an essay about what that sentence means to him at this moment. He needs to use it to survive and then find out exactly what it means to him later, to give it time and energy once it's proved its worth. Wisdom is derived from experience. You can't know what something means without first testing it. That is literally the basis of scientific pursuits. Observe and then find the reason for what you observed. The problem is just that he's at the beginning stages of the journey, the messy parts of finding himself that lead to inconsistency and struggle, and they find it so ugly that they prevent him from ever trying. That's the issue. The start is ugly and we hate it for that. We feel inconsistent, we feel awful, we feel like we're jumping place to place, stealing from others. But it is required. You can't grow up if you were never a kid. We have to accept that the past dies when the present is born, that inconsistency is a part of life. We were never meant to hold all of our information forever, even if we desired to do so. And that's exactly Raiden's issue with his past. It turns out he was a child soldier, raised by Solidus to kill, earning the nickname Jack the Ripper for how efficient he was at it. He refuses to acknowledge this past, to see the actions as his own, and that is a weakness of his once again. But he refuses to see it because he thinks that, in this age of everything being recorded forever, the self should be consistent. And how does one be consistent with a child soldier's past now in a peaceful country? He can't recognize his past because once he does, he'll be faced with it all the time, every day, never able to naturally forget it as we're meant to do. The past should not be forgotten, but it also can't live forever. Raiden foregoing his past is making a mistake that he had to make so long as information is forever. This is the problem the Patriots suffer from. They see everything. They are not people with specific interactions, they are code, a program running through itself every piece of information possible. This means that they can't spend time on it. They can't know who made it all and why. All they can do is contrast it to the other information. Fact check, but not feeling check. Missing all the context they claim to need to create. Struggling to keep up, they must have breezed through so much information like this. So many statements from faceless entities that of course all they saw was contradiction. They're witnessing a specific thing from a specific time pulled out of it and examined against everything else. That one post was never meant to represent a whole person, just a single thought they had. But it gets confused for the whole because in this immediate space, that's all they can provide and all they can see. And that's all the Patriots have to go on. Their perspective as
the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often.
That is, as a national entity, is beyond context. After all, what is an American? Is it New York or Dallas? Hollywood or Atlantic City? Is it a studio apartment in a former industrial building or a ranch in the countryside? Is it white, black, or everything else? A country, especially one like this, it's too large for an American to exist. Trying to make that classification only leads to a vapid, unreal-seeming individual who believes in nothing specific at all, just vague ideas because that's all that can fit all of America. That's the problem with the Patriots. They're looking too large, like Raiden earlier in the game, looking without context. They are the issue, and they justify their actions off the results of their own flaws. The question is where we go from here. Whether we like it or not, the issue exists, and it only gets worse and worse so long as the analog to the Patriots in our world, the rich with their power, whether corporations or governments, continue to perpetuate it for profit and control. They own the platforms, the theaters we have to engage within. How is a creature formed by its surroundings supposed to fight those very surroundings? But we have already begun part of what comes next when we covered Snake. So long as we follow those paths for our own reasons, so long as we don't cast off the slow moments and carry things between them where we can, we start to fight back.
I know you didn't have much in terms of choices this time, but everything you felt, thought about during this mission is yours, and what you decide to do with them is your choice.
Taking a page from Orwell, control is never complete until they can change how you feel. They can change what you say, and where you say it, and when you say it. They can even change the information which shapes how you think. But so long as you feel, the spark remains. Even if you can't choose the action, you must choose the reason. But I think our answer really ends with Jack and Rose, a fake relationship cast into total doubt during those AI calls, as we're left to wonder where Rose ends and the AI begins. If she was ever a part of this mission, or that even if she wasn't, could the things it said still be representative of things she would say? There's no way to know what their past has actually been. But meeting each other in the chaos of downtown, as Arsenal Greer has crashed into Federal Hall, they get to decide where to go from here. In embracing Rose despite everything, he also recognizes his past, accepts that the world is composed of temporary states. If they can love each other despite a fake start, despite any start since there's no certainty, they prove that only one thing matters: here and now. And if that's true, he can finally accept who he was by deciding who he'll use it to become. Everything which isn't important, information not worth passing on, will die, and the few bits which are worth saving will be, by his will, passed on as fit, and like Snake's words to him, used for new purposes, adapting, changing, shaping within their context. Each individual, in embracing this temporary state rather than fighting it, is embracing their human flaws rather than hiding them, participating in the natural selection of information of our story. This is what we have to do. We can't destroy those wide theaters and all the good they provide, the ability they give us to be whoever we wish with whatever we wish. But like the past, they're simply there to be taken from and then discarded. We use them to find what we love and what we want, and then we share that with something smaller, with specific people, friends, family, and loved ones. What's important to us, it means more and survives longer if it's shared with people important to us who get all the context that the internet will miss. For its sake, and ours as it comprises us, we have to share our information, large and small alike. Like Jack and Rose, isolating themselves from the chaos of the city that they met within, we have to remember that we don't exist to serve the cities and technology we build. They only exist to better our lives. We find each other through their streets, their endless channels, and then we forget them. Use these tools and then discard them so that no one gains power from you relying on them. Keep only what you love. Build your context and embrace your limitations.